I'm Gary Taubes. I'm the co-founder of the Nutrition Science Initiative. I'm a journalist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a PhD. I've been studying the science of diet and nutrition, the sociology of the field for about almost 20 years now, 15 years. Well, the first two books I wrote in my life were on physics and nuclear and physics, and they were on researchers who discovered non-existent phenomena who basically screwed up. I've been obsessed with this idea of bad science or pathological science, which is the science of things that aren't so. Beginning in the 90s, I moved into public health because some of my friends in the physics community said, if you're interested in bad science, you should look at the stuff of public health. It's terrible. By the late 90s, I was working on nutrition and ended up writing two books on the subject. One is called, well, in the United States, it's called Good Calories, Bad Calories. It's called The Diet Delusion in the UK and elsewhere. And the follow-up to that was Why We Get Fat and What to Do About It, which is a sort of airplane reading version, polemical version of Good Calories, Bad Calories. So I got into this field in a sort of unique period where I had a lot of funding that allowed me to spend years of my life reading the literature back to the 19th century. The internet made it possible for the first time ever to actually at least locate the primary literature on virtually every subject having to do with nutrition. And as a journalist, I could also interview people, so I interviewed hundreds, probably 500 or 600 researchers and administrators who had been involved with determining what constitutes a healthy diet. And what I learned in the course of my research is that many of our ideas and sort of fundamental beliefs seem to be misconceived. The idea that saturated fat is a primary dietary cause of heart disease is one of the pillars of nutritional wisdom, and it was based on pretty bad science. More important than that, the idea that the reason we get fat is because we eat too much. We take in more calories than we expend, which is sort of the bedrock explanation for why the cause of obesity also seems to be misconceived, based on a misconception of the laws of physics, and it sort of takes obesity, which is a biological problem, and turns it into a physics problem. And so what I've argued in my books is that had the nutrition obesity research community been doing their job right, had they really been understanding how to do science correctly, they would have come to much different conclusions than they did. They would have concluded, as pre-World War II German and Austrian clinicians did, that obesity is a hormonal regulatory disorder. It literally is a hormonal issue. And by the 1960s, they would have come to the conclusion that the hormone insulin is a primary hormone involved, and that this works to make us store fat rather than burn it. And we would have had a much different view of the cause of obesity, how to prevent it. The obvious implication would be that carbohydrates, specifically refined grains and sugars, are fattening. And if you don't want to be fat, you don't eat these foods. It's pretty much that simple. And if you are obese or diabetic and you want to be healthier, you don't eat these foods because they're the cause of the problem. It's not that you eat too much or you're too lazy, you don't get enough exercise. It's that the type of foods you're eating are literally causing these disease states. And this is an exceedingly controversial view. It's contrary to what some huge proportion of the working nutritionists and obesity researchers and diabetes researchers believe. I'm a journalist, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, so they perceive me as something of an interloper or who's come in with this naive viewpoint that there's a simple solution to a multifactorial complex problem, and people who promote simple solutions in medicine are often quacks. So, you know, it's been a pretty much ongoing struggle to maintain credibility. I got a lot of respect as a journalist, and I still do, but the idea is making that respect, earning that respect in the medical community and the nutrition community, and I'm making slow progress, just as this movement is making slow progress. But it's not easy, and it's not fast.